Security grabs his arm before he even says a word. Not a question, not a warning, just hands, thick, suited, practiced, closing around Zaire Holloway's left sleeve like he wandered in off the street and needs to be returned to wherever he came from. The showroom glows like a cathedral built for money. White LED lights pour down onto Italian marble floors so clean they mirror the ceiling. 7 rows of 7-figure vehicles sit behind velvet ropes, each one lit like a painting in a museum. The air smells like leather conditioning and imported cologne, and something colder, the quiet arrogance of rooms designed to remind certain people they don't belong. Standing at the center of it all, surrounded by executives in suits that cost more than most people's rent, is a man who hasn't looked up yet. He doesn't need to. The room already moves around him. Staff pivots, executives reposition, 2 assistants hover 3 steps behind, tablets raised, eyes waiting. Rashid Al-Maroof doesn't enter rooms. Rooms reorganize for him. Zaire doesn't fight the grip. He doesn't raise his voice. He stands completely still, worn jacket, clean hands, a battered leather folder against his chest, and waits. That stillness is what finally makes Rashid look up. If you're watching this for the first time, welcome. Stay close. What happens next inside this showroom will change the way you think about power, leverage, and who actually controls the room. Rashid crosses the floor in measured strides, executives falling in line behind him. He stops 4 feet away, close enough for everyone to hear what comes next. He looks Zaire up and down, slowly, the kind of look designed not to assess, but to diminish. Then, loud enough for every employee and every camera to register, Rashid Al-Maroof says, "Do you think this is a shelter?" The room stops breathing, security tightens its grip, and the doors behind Zaire begin to swing open.
Cold air presses in through the widening gap, but Zaire doesn't move toward it. He stands exactly where he is, chin level, folder against his chest, and speaks in a voice calm enough to cut glass. "I'm here about your EV acquisition announcement. My battery design aligns directly with your expansion infrastructure." Rashid tilts his head, the kind of tilt that signals he's decided something is beneath him, but is choosing to be entertained by it for a few more seconds. "You want to talk business," he repeats slowly. "Yes," Zaire says. Rashid glances right at Farouk, a sharp-jawed executive whose entire career depends on reading Rashid's move correctly, and Farouk responds with a perfectly timed smirk. That smirk travels the room like a lit fuse. 2 executives follow. An assistant near the reception desk drops her eyes to a tablet. One junior employee near the back quietly turns away. "You can't even expand your wardrobe," Rashid says, "and you're here to talk about expanding infrastructure?" Low laughter rolls through the room. Zaire's jaw tightens, once, just a fraction. Then his face goes completely still again. Near the back wall, a young woman shifts her weight. Her phone is angled just low enough that no one has noticed the red recording light blinking steady. "Remove him," Rashid says. No volume needed. The words land like a door slamming. "Take him out, now." Both guards move in together. One grips his right arm. One pushes from behind. The leather folder presses hard into Zaire's ribs as they march him toward the exit. The glass doors open wide. The wind outside is sharp and cold and indifferent. Right there, at the threshold between the warm showroom light and the dark Chicago street, Zaire speaks one last time, quiet, steady, aimed at the back of Rashid's head. "You're about to make a very expensive mistake." The doors close. He doesn't look back. The curb is cold. The concrete is hard. Zaire Holloway sits down on it like a man who chose to, not like a man who was pushed out. He sits with his back straight, leather folder across his knees and eyes fixed on the glowing glass building across the street. White, perfect, indifferent, and he breathes. The Chicago wind cuts straight off the lake and through his jacket.
It lifts the corner of a page inside the folder, a technical schematic dense with numbers, and he presses it flat with 2 fingers without looking down. He already knows every number on every page. He doesn't open it to review. He opens it to confirm. There's a difference. One is doubt. The other is discipline. His provisional patent sits on top, filed 9 months ago. 2 independent engineers verified what it can do. Reduce battery heat degradation by 37%. In EV infrastructure, that number isn't incremental, it's a category shift. A cab splashes through a puddle at the curb without slowing down. Zaire watches it disappear. No tears, no rage, no rehearsing what he should have said. Just a man sitting still while the worst version of his night surrounds him, holding something real in a beat-up folder while the city moves past like he's invisible. Humiliation doesn't always look like collapse. Sometimes it looks exactly like this. Across town right now, a crystal glass is being raised. Rashid Al-Maroof is laughing. He has no idea what is waiting in his inbox.
The champagne glass catches the chandelier light. Gold liquid, rising bubbles. Rashid's fingers relaxed around the stem, and then his phone vibrates against the table. He ignores it. It vibrates again. He sets the glass down. The subject line reads, "Patent conflict, urgent risk exposure." His due diligence analyst, timestamp 2:14 a.m. His team knows what it costs them to use the word urgent without reason. Rashid opens the email. The table around him stays loud. Laughter, glasses, someone telling a story about a yacht. But that noise begins pulling back from him, like water draining from a room he's still standing in. He reads the first paragraph, then reads it again. The flagged technology is a battery thermal regulation system, a core component his engineers plan to integrate into the new charging network. The network at the center of the $220 million deal toasted 3 hours ago in this very room. The provisional patent covering that system was filed 9 months ago. The name attached to it, Zaire Holloway. Rashid's thumb stops scrolling. His legal team's notes are precise. If Holloway formalizes the patent and seeks injunction before integration begins, the rollout doesn't delay, it freezes. Investors already watching the U.S. expansion nervously would have every reason to pull back. Competitors circling from a distance would have every reason to move in. The man Rashid called a shelter guest, in front of staff, clients, and apparently at least one recording phone, owns the technology his $220 million deal depends on. Rashid sets his phone face down on the table. The laughter around him continues. He doesn't hear a single word of it. Somewhere across this city, that man is still awake, and he hasn't filed yet. By 7:30 a.m., the boardroom on the 43rd floor fills without anyone being told twice. That alone is the first sign something is wrong. Rashid stands at the head of the table. Jacket on, no coffee, no small talk. Every executive in the room reads that combination correctly. Farouk sits 2 seats down, posture carefully neutral. The legal team lines the right side. Desmond Okafor, the engineering lead, sits directly across with a laptop open and a face that has clearly been awake since 4 a.m. "Who vetted the IP stack on the thermal regulation system?" Rashid asks. The question lands and nobody moves. 3 seconds pass. A junior associate clears his throat. "Sir, the provisional patent was filed before our acquisition target formalized their own documentation. It wasn't flagged during the initial sweep because..." "Because," Rashid repeats, quietly. The associate stops. Desmond turns his laptop screen toward the room. A technical comparison. The acquired company's integration specs beside the Holloway patent schematics. Overlapping sections highlighted in red. The overlap is not minor. It is structural. "Our team ran numbers this morning," Desmond says, hands flat on the table. "His thermal output design reduces heat degradation in high cycle charging by 38.6%. That's not comparable to our current stack. That's ahead of it." A woman from legal slides a 1-page summary toward Rashid. He doesn't pick it up. "If he files for formalization and seeks injunction," she begins,
"I know what happens," Rashid says. She closes her folder. A vice president leans forward carefully. He hasn't licensed it to anyone else yet, every word chosen, which means we still have a window. The room understands exactly what that means. They need Zaire Holloway, the man Rashid called a shelter guest, in front of staff, clients, and a recording phone, is the only person who can prevent a $220 million deal from freezing mid-execution. Rashid says nothing for a long moment. Then he stands, walks to the window, and stares down 43 floors at the cold Chicago morning below. "Get me his number," he says. No one exhales too loudly, because every person at that table understands what making that call is going to cost the man standing at the window, and Zaire Holloway hasn't answered his phone yet. The phone rings 3 times before Zaire picks up. No greeting, just silence on his end, the kind that forces the other person to speak first. Rashid sits alone in his office on the 43rd floor, door closed, blinds drawn. The city sprawls below him through floor-to-ceiling glass, but he isn't looking at it. He's looking at the name on his screen, Zaire Holloway. "Yes?" Zaire's voice finally comes through, calm, unhurried. Rashid exhales slowly through his nose. This is a conversation he has never had to have before. Not with investors, not with competitors, not with anyone. "I'd like to discuss a partnership," he says. The pause that follows lasts exactly 4 seconds, long enough to feel intentional. "Is this about the patent conflict?" Zaire asks. Rashid's jaw tightens. The man already knows. Of course he knows. He filed it 9 months ago. He walked into that showroom carrying leverage, and Rashid mistook it for desperation. "Yes," Rashid says. Another pause, shorter this time, 2 seconds. "I'm not interested in selling," Zaire replies. The words land clean. No negotiation, no posturing, just a statement. Rashid leans forward in his chair. His hand tightens around the phone. For the first time in a decade, he feels something unfamiliar crawling up the back of his neck. Not fear, not yet, but the edge of it, the shape of what happens when control slips. Then Zaire speaks again. "But I am interested in building." Rashid doesn't respond immediately. He lets those words settle. Building, not selling, not licensing, building together. "Where?" Rashid asks. "The showroom," Zaire says. 1 hour. The call ends. Rashid sets the phone down and stares at it for a long moment. The man he humiliated publicly is about to walk back through the same doors, not as a beggar, as a partner. And this time, the entire room will know exactly who holds leverage. The glass doors open, and Zaire Holloway steps inside. Same worn jacket, same battered leather folder, same steady eyes that noticed everything the first time and are noticing even more now. But the room doesn't move the same way. Staff freezes mid-step. Executives who smirked 12 hours ago suddenly find reasons to check their phones. The receptionist who avoided his eyes last night now stands straighter, hands folded, waiting for instructions she doesn't have. Security doesn't move toward him. They step aside. Zaire crosses the marble floor in measured strides, no hesitation, no rush, and the sound of his shoes echoes in a room that has gone completely silent. He stops at the center, exactly where Rashid stood the night before, and waits. Farouk appears first, the sharp-jawed executive who smirked on cue. He extends a hand this time, professional, careful. "Mr. Holloway," he says, "thank you for coming." Zaire doesn't take the hand immediately. He looks at it, then at Farouk's face. Then he shakes it once, firm, brief, and releases. "Where's Rashid?" Zaire asks. "Upstairs," Farouk says. "The boardroom. He's waiting." Zaire nods, no smile, no acknowledgement of the shift in energy. He follows Farouk toward the elevator bank, and as they pass the showroom floor, every pair of eyes tracks him. The young woman near the back, the one who recorded everything last night, watches him walk past. Her phone sits in her pocket now. The footage is already uploaded, already backed up, already time-stamped. Some moments don't need commentary. They just need proof. The elevator doors close. Farouk clears his throat. "About last night." "Don't," Zaire says quietly. Farouk stops talking. The elevator climbs in silence. When the doors open on the 43rd floor, Rashid is standing in the hallway. Not in the boardroom, not behind a desk. Standing alone, waiting, hands at his sides. Their eyes meet. No one speaks. And for the first time since this began, Rashid Al-Maroof looks like a man who understands that power isn't permanent. It's negotiable.
The boardroom table is long, polished, and empty except for one projection screen at the far end. Zaire sets his folder down and opens it slowly. Engineers lean forward in their seats. Legal counsel sits perfectly still. Desmond Okafor watches from the side with a laptop open, ready to cross-reference every technical claim in real time. Rashid sits at the head of the table, hands folded, expression unreadable. Zaire doesn't look at him yet. He pulls a single sheet from the folder, a schematic, and slides it across the table toward Desmond. "Run it," Zaire says. Desmond scans it once, types rapidly, and the projection screen lights up. 2 columns appear. The acquired company's thermal regulation specs on the left, Zaire's provisional patent design on the right. The overlap zones glow red. But there's something else. Green zones. Areas where Zaire's system outperforms by margins the room wasn't expecting. Heat degradation reduction, Desmond reads aloud. 38.6% in high-cycle environments. Charging efficiency improvement across rural low-voltage grids, 41%. Scalability without infrastructure overhaul, confirmed. The legal team exchanges glances. One woman leans forward and whispers something to the man beside her. He nods slowly. An investor on speakerphone asks the question everyone is thinking. Why didn't you license this to Tesla or Rivian or any of the majors already building networks? Zaire finally looks at Rashid. Because the majors are building for profit margins, he says. I'm building for access. He taps the folder. Rural America doesn't need another luxury charging network in cities that already have 6 options. It needs infrastructure in places investors ignore, small towns, highways between nowhere and somewhere, communities where one charging station could mean the difference between adoption and abandonment. The room goes quiet. Rashid studies him, not with dismissal this time, with calculation. You have the innovation, I have the capital and the acquisition pipeline. Alone, we compete. Together, we change infrastructure, Zaire finishes. Rashid extends his hand across the table. But Zaire doesn't take it. Not yet. One more thing, Zaire says. The room tenses. You publicly humiliated me in front of your staff, your clients, and at least one recording device. If we're building a company that claims to shape the future, it can't operate with the culture I saw last night. Every executive freezes. Zaire continues, calm, measured, relentless. Merit over image, access over arrogance, innovation over ego. The silence that follows is absolute. This isn't just a deal negotiation, it's a reckoning. Rashid doesn't drop his hand, but he doesn't move it forward either. He holds it exactly where it is, extended, waiting, and for the first time in his career, lets someone else decide whether the handshake happens. Zaire looks at the hand, then at the room, then back at Rashid, and slowly, deliberately, he reaches across the table and shakes it. The room exhales. Desmond closes his laptop. Legal counsel begins drafting terms. But outside that boardroom, in offices and inboxes and investor chat threads across 3 continents, the real question is already forming. What happens when the man who was thrown out becomes the man who can't be ignored? Zaire sits alone in his apartment that night. the same place he moved into after the joint venture launched. One bedroom, decent light, nothing excessive, and stares at the email on his screen. The offer is still there. The clause is still there. The path to control is one signature away. He thinks about the showroom, the grip on his arm, the laughter, the glass doors closing behind him, the curb, the cold. He thinks about Rashid's face when he realized the man he dismissed owned the technology his empire needed. He thinks about the handshake, and he thinks about what comes next. Revenge is easy when it's loud, when it's visible, when it destroys something publicly and everyone can see the wreckage. But real power, the kind that lasts, doesn't announce itself. It builds. Zaire opens a blank email, types carefully, sends it to his lawyer with a single instruction: decline the offer, full stop, no counters. Then he opens a second email, this one to Rashid. Subject line: next phase. Body: 3 words: let's keep building. He hits send, closes the laptop, and for the first time in months, he sleeps soundly. Because revenge isn't always about tearing someone down. Sometimes it's about proving that you were never small to begin with. The joint venture expands, new corridors launch, hiring practices change. The company becomes something neither man could have built alone, not because they liked each other, but because they respected what the other brought to the table. Rashid never apologizes in words, but 6 months later, during a board meeting, he does something unexpected. He defers to Zaire on a technical decision in front of 12 investors. No hesitation, no posturing, just, Zaire knows this better than I do, his call. That moment doesn't make headlines, but everyone in the room remembers it. Because leadership isn't always about who speaks loudest. Sometimes it's about who listens when it costs them pride. 2 years later, the network operates in 17 states. Charging times drop. Rural adoption climbs. The press stops calling it a partnership and starts calling it a standard. And somewhere in the back of a Chicago showroom, the same one where this all began, a bronze plaque is installed near the entrance. It doesn't mention Rashid. It doesn't mention Zaire. It just says, merit over image, access over arrogance, innovation over ego. No one explains it to visitors, but the people who work there understand exactly what it means and what it cost to earn. Power doesn't test character, it exposes it. The question was never whether Zaire could destroy Rashid when he finally gained leverage. The question was whether he would choose a bridge or a burn. He chose the bridge, and in doing so, built something bigger than revenge. He built legacy. But here's what no one talks about. 3 months after Zaire declined that buyout offer, the VC firm that sent it approached someone else, someone inside the company, someone who didn't have Zaire's patience, someone who believed power is only real when it's taken, not earned. That email is still sitting in an inbox right now, unopened, but not for long. If you want to know who received it and what happens when ambition meets opportunity in a company built on second chances, then you need to stay close to this channel. Subscribe, turn on notifications, because the next story doesn't just inspire, it reveals what happens when the culture you build gets tested by the people you trusted. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it, because real change doesn't happen in boardrooms. It happens when enough people decide that merit, access, and innovation matter more than image, arrogance, and ego. The story isn't over. It's just beginning, and you don't want to miss what comes next. The joint venture announcement goes live 6 weeks later. Press coverage is immediate. Bloomberg runs it as breaking news. TechCrunch frames it as a cross-cultural infrastructure play. The Wall Street Journal quotes 3 analysts who all say the same thing in different words. This changes the EV charging landscape. Rashid and Zaire appear together at the press conference. Same stage, same microphones, different energy than anyone expected. Rashid speaks first, polished, controlled. He talks about innovation timelines, rural market expansion, and strategic partnerships.
The reporters nod and take notes. Then Zaire steps forward. He doesn't read from cards. He doesn't soften his words. 3 months ago, he begins, I lost my business, my savings, and my apartment. I came to this city with a patent, a prototype, and a belief that merit still matters. What I found was a system that judges first and listens later. The cameras focus tighter. This partnership exists because talent doesn't disappear when it's dismissed. It waits. And if you're patient enough, if you're disciplined enough, the same people who couldn't see you will eventually need you. Rashid shifts slightly beside him, not uncomfortably, but visibly. Zaire continues. We're not building luxury stations for people who already have options. We're building access for people who've been told the future isn't for them yet. That starts with how we treat the people in front of us. That starts with culture. When the press conference ends, the footage circulates faster than the official announcement, not because of the technology, because of the tone. Inside the company, the shift is quiet but unmistakable. Executives who dismissed him now CC him on strategy emails. Engineers who avoided eye contact now request meetings. The woman who recorded the showroom humiliation, her name is Amara, gets promoted to communications lead 3 weeks later. Her first project? A transparency initiative. Her second, an internal review of hiring practices. No one mentions the recording, but everyone knows it exists. Leverage doesn't always look like a lawsuit. Sometimes it looks like a culture that can't afford another mistake. 6 months in, the first rural charging corridor goes live. Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, places where EV adoption rates were near zero. Within 8 weeks, usage climbs 140%. Investors call it a proof of concept. Zaire calls it the beginning. But on a Friday afternoon in late autumn, 3 weeks after the corridor launch, Zaire receives an email marked confidential, time-sensitive. The sender is a venture capital firm he's never heard of. The subject line reads, exclusive acquisition offer, full buyout terms attached. He opens it. The offer is clean, aggressive, majority control of the joint venture, full operational authority, and buried in the third paragraph of the term sheet, a clause that makes his hand stop scrolling. Transition of leadership, Rashid Al-Maroof, to be removed from executive decision-making within 90 days of close. Zaire sits back in his chair. He reads it again. The firm isn't just offering money, they're offering revenge. The kind that doesn't require confrontation, just a signature, just a yes. He closes the laptop. Not doesn't reply, not yet. Because the question isn't whether he could do it, the question is whether he should.